Sometimes life is messy. Have you ever wished you could refocus your mind, home, relationships, and work life? Join us as we use research-based information to make practical changes and simplify life. This is Life Simplified.
Welcome to Life Simplified. So this week we're going to continue our monthly theme of touring across Kentucky. And we're focusing on food, family, and fun. And so traveling across the state this week, we're going to be focusing on the Bluegrass, horses, Bourbon, and Boone. And so within this region, it's small towns. Of course, with the Bluegrass, there's horses, there's thoroughbred farms, a dome, distilleries, of course, which we've learned is pretty much statewide throughout this month, a soldier's haven, and lots of cheese. So if you're into cheese, this is the area for you. And so again, we are using the Kentucky Tourism Visitor's Guide and their website, which we will put in our show notes if you're interested in learning a little bit more about it. So, have you all toured any of these areas? And so thinking about that, that's like Madison County, Scott County, Lincoln, Bourbon, Fayette County, which I'm sure you all have probably been to Fayette County, which is Lexington area, Woodford, any of those kind of areas when you all were in your travels.
So I was kind of looking a little bit at your notes, and I think it's interesting because this area I've been in a lot for a lot of work-related reasons, or maybe my kids' sports and things like that, but I've never visited these areas as a tourist. I've never gone and done some of the things on this list that we're going to talk about today. Because I've been there, I'm used to it. I usually have a purpose. There's some reason I'm there, and I kind of go do that thing, and I haven't explored. But I think this is great because I know I'm going to be back in these areas a lot for those same reasons, and it gives me something to kind of switch it up to make it a little more exciting. Because once you go to the same place over and over again, you kind of want something new to see and do.
I'm kind of the same. I've been to a lot of these areas for work. My oldest child goes to school in Lexington, so we go visit her. But as far as going and touring the different things, I wanted to go to the castle. And I'm sure the castle has a specific name, but to me it is the castle. And so that's
the Kentucky Castle. You're
okay.
Right.
I'm like, I mean, does it have a specific name? It's just the castle to me. But I wanted to go there for years and years and years, and I have been there as a tourist. In fact, I got engaged there, and it was the middle of winter, so I want to go back.
I'm the same like you guys. You know, I've been to all of these places either for trainings or work, but never personally. My sister lived in Lexington, so I got to see different parts of Lexington, but then I go to Lexington, for trainings. Georgetown, same thing, went and spent a week up there for a training for work, and I got to explore a little bit of Georgetown. Not in the depth in some of the other places that I've been. So that's definitely on my to-do list, is hit some of these different counties.
I think I should probably mention, I don't know how I overlooked this in my little spill, but I did go to the University of Kentucky for school, so I did actually live in Lexington for 4 years. So yes, I did not go as a tourist, but I have lived there. So there are certain things, especially in the Lexington area, that I have done. Because other than the western part of the state, this is the only part of Kentucky I have ever lived in, and so I do have that experience too. I guess I completely overlooked that factor, but yeah, so I can see it from a college student point of view as well.
Well, that's good. I actually grew up in this area, so a lot of these, that's probably why I'm kind of enthusiastic about it, is because I've been to a lot of these. Some of them I didn't really go to. I didn't really go to Lexington a lot, so hopefully you can maybe hit a little bit more in that. I did more of the surrounding smaller communities, and so hopefully today, how we're going to flow is I'm going to just highlight a few of the places that were in the Kentucky Tourism Guide. And then I'm going to go through some things to do, places to stay, and places to eat. And so just keep that in mind that I kind of just picked out some that I had been to or some that are on the website. So there's probably, like we've mentioned all month long, a lot of things that we're maybe miss. So let us know, like we've mentioned before, or go to the tour guide or the website to kind of find out some more about these areas. The first place we're going to talk about is Frankfurt. And we actually got to go on a work trip and do a couple of these things in Frankfurt a few months ago. So Frankfurt, of course, has a lot of history. So Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History, that is where we actually got to tour that. And so I kind of refer to it as like the historical museum, but that's the official name of it. And so inside of it, which we actually got to hear, was Abraham Lincoln's pocket watch. So they actually have a recording of the ticking of that. And we didn't get to do this, but there is a Civil War soldier's haunted cornet. I guess maybe we missed that in the museum. I don't remember hearing about that, but I'm sure. But they talked about
I feel
it.
like Ashley would have honed in on the haunted.
I don't remember it.
She would have been like, "Yeah."
All right, so there's a road trip.
But maybe we missed it because I know they rotate their things in and out. So this place they were talking about houses all of Kentucky's history. It's a really neat place to visit. Other things to do in the Frankfurt area, like I mentioned, was the Historical Society Museum. They also have the Military History Museum, which is tied to that. We didn't get to go to that, but it was really close. It was walkable.
Yeah, from right across the street or so.
Yeah, it was very close. So if you're in that area, definitely check that out. One thing we talked about that we didn't get to go to, I think it was because of timing, which was the Rebecca Ruth Hunt candy tours. And so if you're into candy, that is actually where bourbon chocolate was born. And so they do have tours where you can go and look at like the antique candy furnace. You can look at the copper kettles that they cook it in, kind of the originals when they first got started. So if you're into candy, that's a good area to go. Of course, there's the Capitol. We went to the old Capitol. You can do the new Capitol. You can tour that as well. So there's a lot of history and things to do in Frankfurt. There also are river tours. Of course, like across Kentucky, there's parks. You can go do a lot of different things. And then the Buffalo Trace Distillery is in that area as well. And they have a really good tour there. A lot of history to share.
I've gotten to tour the old and the new Capitol a couple times because if your children go to school here in 4th grade, state history is really big, state government. And so my kids, the school they go to, they always get to do an overnight trip there. And I would say, like, especially if you're from Kentucky and you've not gone to Frankfurt and you've not visited the old or new Capitol, I really, really encourage you to do so. They're both really neat. I think the old Capitol is super cool. Just it's so historic, and just the way they built the structure is really neat. So I would definitely put it on your to-do list if it's not something that you've done or that you think you'll get to do with your kids.
So some places to stay if you're going to be traveling to Frankfurt. And again, I just kind of picked some different ones. Bourbon on the Hill, which is like a house that you can rent. It has a view of downtown Frankfurt, and I didn't mention earlier, but they have like a neat little downtown area. They have restaurants and shops and different places to go. So that could be, you could stay close to downtown, see the view of the Capitol and the museums, of course. And also it's close to Castle and Key, which is another distillery that is there in Frankfurt as well. They also have a Kentucky River campground. So they do have a campground if you're traveling with the tent, if you want to do that, if that's your thing, or RV or camper. Something that I thought looked really neat on their website was the B&B's at the Meeting House, which is a Civil War era home in the historical district. And again, that is in walking distance from town as well. So there's a lot of different things, different local places to stay. Of course, I'm going to mention some local places. Of course, there's always the hotels and different things you can stay at if that's more of your pace when you're traveling with your family. And so places to eat, there's a Jim's Seafood, which is family owned for 35 years, and it's actually on the river. So it'd be a neat place to go. A Main Street Diner, which I'm pretty sure we saw when we were walking. It's like right by the old Capitol. It's a newer restaurant, but it's 50s themed.
That sounds fun.
And it looked really neat when we walked by. I don't think it was open maybe when we were there, but it looked like a cool atmosphere.
Sounds neat to me.
Bourbon on Main. I've actually been there once. It's downtown Frankfort along the river. And, of course, in the name, mixology and then culinary delights, of course. I'm sure there's a lot of other local places or other restaurants that if you want to venture out. I don't think in Kentucky that you can probably go to a bad restaurant. I think they all have their own
we do food well.
unique spin on things. But I don't know that I've really been anywhere that's like, I'm not going back there again. But so the next location, which is close to Frankfort, is actually Georgetown, which is Scott County. And so their big thing is the Toyota plant. So that is where they make Toyota vehicles. And they actually have I didn't know this, they have a Kentucky Experience Center there on site. And so they have 8 different exhibits where you can learn about the production process of Toyota. You can take a tram that's around the 9 million square plant. Has anybody done that?
No, but I read about that and I was like, that's really cool. And we're up in that area a lot. It would be a neat, like, little side
Right, because it's
jaunt,
close to Lexington,
Yeah.
Frankfort. I could kind of drive over and do that. But I thought that was very, very neat that they did that. So some other things to do. The Buffalo Gals Barn Quilt Trail. So I didn't know about that, but that was pretty cool. That was on the website as well. There are, of course, numerous thoroughbred farms that you can drive through in Georgetown and Lexington. Just want to highlight that was mentioned as Old Friends Thoroughbred Retirement Farm. There's an aquatic center there in Georgetown if you have your kiddos there and there's you have some downtime and want to do something with them. And then Country Boy Brewing Company, which is more on the beer side versus the bourbon side. So if that's something that you're into, it's definitely something to go to. So some notable places to stay. They're the Black Ridge Hall B&B, which is a mansion. It's built on 5 acres of land. And from what I looked at on the website, you can actually rent the whole thing, which would, if you're traveling with a large family or an event, that would be neat to stay at. There's some old Southern plantation homes that you can rent, an RV park, and then My Old Kentucky Home, which is a quiet home located near Toyota, the Kentucky Horse Park, and Keeneland, which is more towards the Lexington area. But those are some touristy things that you may find that are interesting. Some places to eat in Georgetown is Rodney's on Broadway, and it is more downtown, and it's actually known for prime beef steak and fresh seafood. There's a Wilshire's. It's one of the oldest homes in Kentucky, and it's the home to General John Payne. And so they actually have burgers. That's their thing. So if you all like burgers, they're famous for their burgers. Local Feed, and that's located in an old historic building. It was actually an ice house back in the 1890s, and they do more of a farm to table concept. That's cool. So just different things to think about when you're going there to eat.
It sounds like something for everybody. If you're looking for fine dining, there's that. If you want something a little more casual.
Right. So depending on your family and how you're traveling, if you're, young kids, older kids, or if it's just a getaway with friends or whomever, there's different things for everybody. And then the next, so it is titled actually the Distillery District, and that's going to be Lexington. So in downtown Lexington, there's a 25-acre entertainment district, and it's at the Pepper Distillery District. And so, Tiffany, do you know a lot about that? I've not been to that area.
So I'm wondering if this is where we went and toured Crank and Boom, because they were in the middle of kind of redoing that area, revitalizing that area. And I'm thinking that might be where it is. It's kind of in the downtown area, but off to the side. It was kind of more like a abandoned area for a while.
So it said it was the original James E. Pepper Distillery built in 1879. So that may have been what it was. Gotcha. And then, like you're mentioning,
I'm thinking that's the area. That's been several years ago, and it was in the process. So I would think by now they probably have completely redone it.
Okay, so it's fairly new
Yeah,
in that
I think
area. And it said they had coffee, ice cream, pizza, beer, so kind of anything.
Yeah, because when we were there, Crank and Boom is a local ice cream place in Lexington. I believe there was a pizza restaurant there, and there was a couple different shops and things. So I could see what that area probably, they built it up. I knew that was their plan and their goal at the time. So it was neat back then. I would like to go back and revisit it because I haven't been there, and I think that was pre-COVID.
Yes.
So it's been a while. So it probably has been completely redone at this point.
So probably something we can add to our list when we travel that
Yes.
way. So some things to do: the Kentucky Horse Park, of course. Have you all been to the Kentucky Horse Park?
Yes.
Yes. So we got to go actually when Kentucky hosted the National Extension Family and Consumer Sciences state national meeting. That was one of the places. That's where we actually had our opening ceremony was out there, and so we got to do that. So it was really neat. I would like to go back to it, and I think at Christmas time they do the lights out there, and you can drive through, and so it's a whole thing. So
It's really neat. That's what I've done mostly is tour the lights, and it was really cool.
It's been years since I've been. When my sister lived up there in Lexington, my kids was small then, and she didn't have any. So we try to do fun things with them, and that was one of the places. And that was it was really neat to see. But it's been years, so being able to go back would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, going along with the All Things Horses is the Keeneland Racetrack. Have you all been to that before?
Yes. A lot of fun. I think it's beautiful. It's a really nice horse track, a really nice facility, and just a lot of fun to dress up and just spend the day with family and friends.
I have not been, but it has been on my list for years. And you would think that as many trips as we do take to Lexington, that we would have been able to do that by now, but it's on the list.
And it's fairly cheap to go. They have different admissions, but you can, I think the time that I went, we just kind of bought general admission. You can just kind of walk in stands and stand up and watch the races, or they actually have seats. So it's an atmosphere, I think, for everybody, because you can dress up, but then you can just go in shorts and a t-shirt and fit in well. So it's whatever your family wants to do, but it definitely is a neat place to go visit. And I didn't know this had a title, but it's Old Frankfort Pike Historic and Scenic Byway. And so I have been on a little bit of this, and it's just scenic back roads that you just drive past horse farms. And so if you're looking for more of like a relaxing thing to do, that'd be cool. Especially if you've never seen a horse farm before or never been in that area, you actually get to see the landscape of that area. So, and I'm sure we've talked about it a lot through all of the different regions, but Kentucky is so vastly different, because if you start on eastern Kentucky, it's mountains and cliffs and hills, and then in the central Kentucky, it's the bluegrass and the rolling hills and the livestock, and then the western Kentucky is the lakes and kind of more flat grain type agricultural area. So this is actually one of the ways that you can see, and this is a good area to look for the horse parks, and the bluegrass actually grows there. You hear bluegrass a lot, but some people have to buy bluegrass seed, which I didn't realize that the other day. Somebody was like, I had to buy the seed, but I grew up where it grew naturally.
Yeah, they're really pretty. I think I accidentally happened onto this scenic route when I was going to Georgetown to visit, and it took me off the route, I guess because I was going to avoid all the traffic of Lexington, but it was a really nice kind of different way to go, and I would definitely recommend visiting that, especially if you're not from here, you've not seen horse farms. They're just really, really pretty.
By any chance, did you go over a little small bridge on a tiny road?
I may have.
Because I think I have done the same thing to Georgetown.
Yes, when you go into Lexington, like you're heading, and then you go left.
Yeah.
And it takes you to that little road. Yeah, I've been on that road before. And you're like, where am I going? But you're like, this is really pretty.
Yeah, you're not mad at it. You're like, I don't know where my GPS is going, but this is okay. I'm good with it.
Yeah, it was beautiful, like, through the countryside and that. But then I come to that bridge, which it didn't bother me because bridges don't. But it was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool,
And then we mentioned chocolates before. Old Kentucky Chocolates is actually a place there in Lexington as well. I've been there. They have good chocolate. They have a good variety of candies. So if that's your thing, that's somewhere to go. And then the Kentucky Castle, which we've been highlighted a little bit, which is a special place to some of our podcasters.
I love the Kentucky Castle. I want to go back in the spring because I've been in the winter, but I want to go back.
So if you're, it's just really neat to look at.
Yeah.
You can tour it. You can stay there. They have a restaurant. They do more of a farm to table thing. They have events, I think, throughout the year. It's just a really neat place to look at because you think about like a castle, you don't think about Kentucky.
Right. And there's a cool story to it. And also, you can go glamping at the Kentucky Castle now. So that's something that they've added in. I've spent my whole life looking at this castle. My dad is a huge University of Kentucky fan, so we were constantly going up into Lexington. So when this group of people, which I think it's been sold now, but when they renovated it and actually opened it, the first thing I wanted to do was tour it, because I just needed to see inside of it. I've been looking at the outside of it my whole life. And so we toured and we had a meal there, and it was during Christmas time, so everything was decorated, and it was a lot of fun. So if you look it up and you think it's too expensive to stay the night, because it is a spend, but it's a cool experience, you can still go visit, do an event, eat a meal there, take a tour. It's something unique that you can't do just anywhere. And you might get engaged. You never know.
You might.
Just going to say, hint, hint, Ashley's husband. Just saying. Trip.
We have an anniversary, right?
We do. We have an anniversary coming up. That's what we should do.
It is a great anniversary visit.
All right. Anything else in Lexington that I missed?
There's some cool historic places in Lexington, if that's your thing. I know I've taken my son to tour Henry Clay's home place there, or I don't know if it's his home place, his mansion, I don't know what they call it exactly, but it's downtown Lexington. He actually had a school project and he had to write about Henry Clay. So we went and visited, and it was neat to kind of hear the backstory and, you know, kind of his connection to Abraham Lincoln and that era and all of those things. Just really rich Kentucky history there. So there's some places you can visit like that maybe wouldn't be at the top of your list, but if that's something you like, I definitely encourage it, because I thought it was a really cool place to go. There's so much in all these places. Do your research. You know what you're into, and you can find something for everyone across the state.
So just a couple places that I found to stay while you're in Lexington. Of course, there's several. The Kentucky River Cottages was a really neat place, and then I put the castle, of course. Can't not focus on that. And it may be a little expensive, so if you're traveling on a budget with your family, that may not be your thing, but if you're there for a special event or a special occasion, that could be something that you check out. So places to eat are endless in Lexington.
Yeah.
I feel like. So this was very hard, but I just went through and tried to pick a few different ones. So there's a Kentucky Deli, and so they actually purchase products from local farms, and so their mission is just to kind of take high quality food, use local ingredients, and make it simple for everybody to enjoy. There's Burgers and Shakes, which is actually a business that's been there since 1957, and it's a drive-in restaurant. And Windy Corner, I don't know if you all have been there before. I have a couple of times, and it is really good. It's actually owned by, which we've have a little bit of experience with through our FCS work and extension, is Chef Weta Michael. And so it's actually out in the country. I think it may be part of that drive that I was talking about. Okay. It's actually close to and around farms. And so it's kind of one of those places you have to go to eat there, but I would highly recommend it. And again, it's a Kentucky Proud restaurant. She puts her spin on po' boys. She has beer cheese and, of course, fried catfish, which is kind of a staple here in Kentucky as well.
We need to venture out. When we go to Lexington, we typically go to just kind of the same things that we know, but I like this list, and we can kind of venture out and maybe go somewhere different next time.
And I will say, if for a family that's traveling, one of the places I love to go, I've been going since college. My dad introduced it to me, so he went there when he was in college in Lexington, is Joe Bologna's. And it's a pizza place. It's downtown, right there by campus. It's very affordable, and it's really neat because it's inside of an old church. So all the stained glass windows are there, and you can tell that it was a church, but it's been refabbed to a pizza restaurant many years ago. But it's a cool, just kind of local place that I think is kind of a rite of passage for the college students there. So it's a good, just, neat experience, but very affordable.
The next stop is Fort Boonesboro State Park, which is in Richmond, which is Madison County, which is where I went to school. I went to school in EKU, so I was like, oh, that's neat that it was in the book. I may not have done all the historical things or visited these particular sites while I was there, but it's some notable things to do. And so the state park is actually the original fort site where Daniel Boone settled in 1775. And so there's working fort cabins that you can go and tour and view. And during different times of the year, they have different 18th century crafts and demonstrations, a lot of historical things that you can do there in Richmond. One place to travel down the road to is Berea, and it's more of an artisan area. And so they have little shops, and the owners, they hand make all their crafts. They have a lot of different things to do, local artists. It's very historical there. They actually have the Kentucky Artesian Center. They have pinnacles, the Berea Pinnacles, where you can go hiking. I've done that a few times when I was in college. That was really cool. And they have a Spotlight Playhouse. So there's a lot of things to do if you're into the more artistic side of things, and or just local history. And then, of course, the Fort Boonesboro State Park and then the Richmond Raceway are a few things that you may want to check out if you're there. Places to stay at the Fort Boonesboro State Park. There are various inns, different bed and breakfasts. In actually Berea, there's the historic Boone Tavern. I've actually eaten there. They have amazing food, but you can stay there as well. So a lot of different places to stay and things to see. So places to eat, and again, I just kind of highlighted different ones. There is the Paddy Wagon Irish Pub. They have Irish food, but they also have burgers, different things like that. And of course, if you're into beers, they have different beers. They have live music every once in a while, so just a cool, fun atmosphere. They have Purdy's Downtown Local Restaurant, which is just a local shop, sandwiches, desserts, coffee, different things like that. Better Burgers and More. It's another local diner with Southern cooking. And then, as I mentioned before, the historic Boone Tavern. So the next place is actually near and dear to my heart. This is my hometown, and this is Carlisle, Kentucky, which is Nicholas County. And this wasn't here when I grew up. I wish it was, but it's Wentz Wildlife Adventure, and I did not know what a capybara was. Have you all ever heard of
what
that
is
before?
a capybara?
You're going to have to tell us.
It's just like a little, like kind of a sloth thing, animal. You have to look it up, and it's very rare, and it's so cool. And they have one there, but they have porcupines, they have a bird encounter, they've been adding a splash pad. There's a lot of things to do there, and it's been a highlight over the past few years.
It kind of looks like a big guinea pig.
Yeah, and it's really cool.
Oh, that's neat.
I mean, my kid would love this. It's really cute.
It's like a probably a day experience, because like I said, they've been adding. I saw they were doing camel rides this summer. They have farmers like they've added a lot to this area, and so that's just one of the highlights that they talked about in the tourism book. And for 2024, of course, there's a lot of history like there is anywhere else. There is a historical society museum there in Carlisle. They have a Kentucky Toy and Doll Museum there. There's a Blue Lake State Park, and so they have hiking there, just kind of anything general that any of the local state parks would have. They have a reenactment there. I think it may be in September that you can go to. They actually have Daniel Boone's last cabin that's there, so if you were interested in going and kind of seeing a little bit more history about Daniel Boone.
That's kind of neat. You could almost like do a Daniel Boone tour of the state. Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the whole state, but there's a lot going on there if that's your thing.
And then, which I think is really cool, on their courthouse. So their courthouse it's like a square. It's actually an old square. So it's like the old timey courthouse square that the street drives all the way around it. But on the courthouse, they have a lit flag that's been there since 1911. And it's really neat to just look at. The courthouse was actually built in the 1800s. They've preserved it well, and it's downtown, and there's some local shops there. You can go shopping, you can eat, and just make a day of visiting that area. So places to stay there in Carlisle, Blue Lick State Park. There's a forest retreat, bed and breakfast. It's really neat. I've not stayed there, but we've kind of went and done some different things there, and it's actually close to the wildlife adventure place. Places to eat. There's a Trax restaurant, which is kind of just a regular diner. One thing that I always remember, we would walk down after school and eat their cheese fries before ball games. So if you check it out, go get some cheese fries. There's a Dick's on Main, which is a family restaurant there. One thing they're notable for are their pies. I think their meringue usually is like at least 2 inches tall. So it's just that southern cooking if you're interested in that kind of thing. There's a Ladobe Steakhouse, which is just a different steakhouse, which is on Highway 68, which is close to the Blue Lick State Park. So if you're there and you're staying at the park, you can eat there, or you could eat at various different locations. And the last place to talk about in this area is Stanton Williams Whitley House, and it's in Stamford. And it's the gathering place for early Kentucky frontiersman, most common George Rogers Clark, which we've talked a little bit about in this area. It's a mansion that was Kentucky's first brick home, and it actually has a racetrack. And so I've never been here, and I didn't really know much about it, but that is something that I'm probably going to do a little bit more research. They have a William Whitley house, so it's an historical manor. They actually have, which I'm passionate about, is the L8 bottle company. So if you've never had an L8 and you're like, what is that? Just try one.
It's delicious.
Get it in the bottle, not the can. There's definitely a difference.
I think that's a good general rule of thumb. Bottle always better.
Yeah. So it's just a soda, and they have different flavors. Actually, they come out. They have like orange and cherry and different. I remember when, little personal history, when I first started dating my husband, I would have to truck L8 to Western Kentucky because they didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so that's like a recent thing that they started selling over here. So definitely check out the L8 Bottle Company, and they have a beer cheese trail. So I know I mentioned beer cheese earlier. They have a beer cheese festival.
I mean, that sounds near and dear to my heart.
It's amazing.
I was like, I need to know more about this beer cheese trail.
I love beer cheese.
So yeah, they actually, well, you can do the trail anytime.
Yeah.
But they do have a festival, and it's in the summer. You buy an armband, and they have all local people, and they set up down on Main Street. You just go down and you just try beer cheese all day.
I think we should do that.
It's very good. I would recommend it.
We should do a whole episode on beer cheese.
Sounds like a life simplified road trip right there.
Definitely. It is really good. Some places to stay: the Bourbon Railroad House, which is a 240-year-old restored home on the Bourbon Trail that you can stay. It sleeps 9 people, so if you're traveling with 9, that may be a place to check out. You can stay at the Daniel Boone National Forest State Park. The Peach House, which I thought sounded really cool. It's a Kentucky vineyard.
Okay.
So you can stay on a vineyard. Some different places to eat. There's a DJ Steakhouse, which is on the beer cheese trail stop. So if you're making your trail, making that way, trying all the cheese, it's a famous family restaurant. There's actually Halls on the River, which I've been, and it's pretty amazing. It's actually a historic restaurant, and the history of it: Captain John Holder was a defender during the siege of Fort Boonesboro. So he was down in this area, and that they kind of made that a local area. You have to drive to actually go to this place. It's not going to be right there in the main area, but it's famous for its beer cheese, of course, catfish, and just southern comfort food. And then again, the beer cheese trail there's 15 stops.
I think we should do this.
Yeah, I need to know more information. I'm going to research.
They
this
actually
beer
have
cheese trail.
a digital passport, which I thought was cool. So you can look it up. 15 stops, try all the beer cheese, all the things.
It's going on the list.
It needs to happen.
Yeah, we're doing this.
All 15.
Yes.
Don't be a quitter. You gotta go all the way.
I'm fine with it because I love beer cheese.
All 15.
So I don't have to ask you all what you're going to be adding to your list, because I think you all have kind of talked about all the different things that you've put on your list and my list as we travel in this area.
You're just doing it with us. There's no choice.
Which is fine. It's fine with me. So I hope that after listening today that you learned a little bit of history of Kentucky and around this area, maybe a few things that you want to visit, and again, visit the Kentucky tourism page and all these areas. I know we talk about this area and this area. You can hit all of these different areas probably in 2 or 3 days time if you are traveling. So they do them by areas because they're close in location, and so you could visit 2 or 3. I know of these actually in a day. So it sounds like there's a lot of things to do, which there is, but don't let it overwhelm you and think like, I can't do all this. It could just be a 2 or 3 day thing that you travel and do. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. This is Life Simplified.
Thanks for listening to Life Simplified. We are family and consumer sciences agents with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. Contact us at lifesimplifiedpodcast@gmail.com.